Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to our podcast, Shamelessly Sensitive.
Yes, today we have a guest. Her name is Alex. Alex is a yoga teacher, pole teacher, performer, and she's been on a healing journey for the last little while since she's gotten alopecia.
This is true. Thank you, guys. Thank you both.
We're so excited to have you here because you've been hanging out with us a little bit more often lately, and we just both love you and your energy.
Yeah.
Very happy to have you here.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
I'm gonna turn
Just
this
did
way
some
so
snow angels, and I feel alive.
Yes, Alex has joined us in our cold journey, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been actually one of the best, if not maybe the best thing I've ever done for myself. I think the cold plunges and the cold therapy. We talked about it the last episode, but it really is an exercise in discipline, like doing something that you know is going to be uncomfortable, but doing it anyways, like not negotiating with yourself. And then when you're done, you feel so good. And it's just a really unique and special experience. And it's something that kind of brings you together too. I'm glad that we have some nutty people in our lives.
Yeah. How have you been finding the cold stuff?
Yeah, I find the cold stuff exactly like you're describing. It's interesting because I know how much I am not scared, but timid to do it or hesitant to do it because that discomfort, especially for the initial 5 to 10 seconds, wow. And then, but I know the benefits, I know how I feel after, so I want to keep leaning into it, knowing that it's something that I believe in or that I find powerful. So yeah, I've been finding it very good. I've been trying to do some more cold showers. Like when I was away, cold showers are what I would do every single day because there was no hot water at all.
Oh no.
So, but it was warm there, right? So
Yeah.
It was super warm where we were at, or where I was at. And I'm talking really, really cold showers. So I got used to that, but there's a difference in many different settings. The cold, it's that test or that reminder of your own strength, your own even just your physical being. It just kind of brings you back into yourself right away. And then that's the part of it that I truly enjoy. And then of course the skin benefits too and all that. I originally started it because I was told, I guess when I was originally introduced to it, we were talking a little bit about different people that experience autoimmune diseases. The whole thing is to try and fight inflammation in the body and try and do anything that you can to reduce it.
Mm-hmm.
So especially with the cold therapy, it really is there for that, to reduce inflammation in the body. That's a huge one. And so I'm okay, this is something I need to do. Not only do I just enjoy it or want to try and do it more, this is something that could be really overall beneficial for me in the long term. So that's why I continue to come back to it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a wonderful healing modality in so many ways because of what you just said, and because of everything we've talked about, the benefits of the discipline and kind of resiliency feelings, but also the mental health benefits and the benefits for depression and ADHD, the benefits for autoimmune diseases, the benefits for literally everything. Maybe there are some people in the world where cold therapy is contraindicated for whatever their conditions are. But I think for a lot of people, it would be hugely beneficial, and it's free for the most part. You're paying for the water that's coming out of the faucet or the shower or whatever. But other than that, it's probably one of the cheapest and best ways to get a dopamine boost and feel really good. And even today I was saying, I was feeling really groggy earlier. I took a nap, and then I took my dog out for a walk, and the cold air hitting my face felt really good. Mm-hmm. And then we did our snow angels, and I always feel really energized after, really calm and present, a lot less anxious, a lot less in my head.
Yeah, it's been really beneficial.
Yeah.
How about we talk about, Alex, you just came back from a trip, Nicaragua. So Alex is aspiring nomad. I can't talk. Aspiring nomad. And you just spent 3 months in Nicaragua?
Yes.
How was that?
It was amazing. It was wild. It was intense. The time that I was there was the rainy season. So rainy season is not the same here as it is there. Rainy season there is like tropical thunderstorms that I've never experienced before in my life. So pretty much what happened was when the storms would come in, I'm talking like heavy bouts of rain and like cracking thunder. So like it was just an interesting experience to be in a most beautiful place, but then having like every couple days having this like tropical thunderstorm. So already that was really like I guess I would say like maybe just the energy or like the experience was so much different than my experience the first time.
Yeah.
But I was also there to like teach yoga. I was doing a work exchange. So when I was there in January, I met a few people that told me about a program or a website that kind of runs a program called Yoga Trade. And essentially it works almost like LinkedIn or like Indeed. It's like a job posting website, but specifically for yoga teachers, massage therapists, and like anything sort of in that wellness field. And so pretty much you like post your profile and then there's all these job postings or exchange opportunities, people looking for help and at their retreats and all that. And so I essentially came home the first time and I saw a posting that was like Nicaragua. I'm like, I really liked my experience. Let me just see about this posting. And the guy and I went back and forth. He owns the gym space that I was working in, but him and his wife actually are from the States, but they just love Nicaragua so much, so they purchased this place pretty much, and they built up this gym with a great online presence as well as a local presence. So there was a lot of people there from Nicaragua that they employed, which was really beautiful. The chefs there, the front desk staff, a couple of the trainers were all like from Nicaragua, but then they would have exchange people like coming in from Canada, US, all over that had some English proficiency, so that when they would come in to teach, I was also there to even just like talk and speak English with the people that like were on staff, because the more that they were able to continue growing their English language, the better. So it was a really nice process. It was like every day I would wake up and teach a yoga class, I would talk to the staff, and like I would share some things in English, they would try and understand, and then vice versa, I would learn some Spanish, and then I would go on walks and tours every day. And yeah, it was just like, it felt like such a wonderful experience to be very immersed in a culture that I really didn't know that much about coming into it. I just had a really open curiosity about it, and they've gone through a lot of challenges in the last couple of years with their government situation, and it's like very similar, if you know the story of like Cuba, I guess, like very similar, where they've really been putting a lot of it's just major for them. Any people that are really trying to better their lives there, the caps on their income and the way that they have to deal with tax, like it's rough for them. So there's not a lot of ways for them to continue to move into a space of abundance and prosperity in their lives. So it's rough. And so when I was there, at one point I thought I was going to really have this one type of experience, but it ended up being a very different one. And that different experience humbled me a lot, and it allowed me to see a way of life and just being grateful for super small things in ways that I haven't really experienced before. And so coming back home, I experienced a very different pace there. And so coming back home, having to reintegrate and feel what the difference is between North America and there, it's been a process. So yeah.
What are some of the things that you think we are taking for granted here in this first world country?
So much. And I think the biggest one that we learned mostly over COVID really is just like how much we need each other on a regular, daily, hourly, minute to minute basis. Like we should have interaction, we should have connection. All of the things that we do as we go about our day, even the mundane things, like they're much better spent in company or in enjoyment instead of like always focusing so hard on productivity. Like there, it's just a well-known thing that like you say 2 o'clock, but like sometimes things happen at 2:45 or 3 o'clock, and that's fine. And like, you know, but everyone is always just joking and conversing and enjoying and like just really getting deeper with each other at all times. So everyone's just super connected, and I loved that so much. So I think that's the biggest one, like interdependence, and it's not to say that they weren't all self-supportive, like, you know, really in their own, but still it was like everything seemed to be done together, and that was really important for me to learn, I think. But I think we take for granted many things as well, the way that we communicate, the way that all the different resources we have, even for when it comes to like all the food sources that we have, how much information we're able to get at all times, how we're able to get to where we need to be whenever we want, I guess. Just many things.
The like accessibility of so many things that many of us really don't know any different. You know, even of course, like, you know, growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s is much different than things are today in a lot of ways. Like the internet obviously has grown, and like our capabilities, but there's so many things still that I've never known any different than to be able to get in a car, drive between 5 and 20 minutes, and be at a grocery store with an abundance of options from all around the world, and so many different types of products. Like even just that, when I really reflect on that, is actually like inconceivable. And that's just one small part, but I think you're right, like about the interdependence, and I think that that's a lesson that I'm learning, I think, right now in my own life, is realizing that that a lot of the ways in which that like I struggle are just like my soul really seeking connection, and I think it's one thing to learn to be comfortable alone. I think that's important too, and I think it's important to like be able to like weather the discomfort of the feeling of loneliness as well. But I don't think like we need to punish ourselves. Like we, you know, it's important to learn how to be alone, learn yourself, get to know yourself better, and not be completely thrown off by being by yourself or feeling lonely. But I also think that our lives are so much more enriched together, and that's something I'm really trying to bring forward into the new year. Is just like, I mean, we were talking about it the other day. I was like, I honestly think I need to schedule a walk with like a different person every morning of every day for the rest of my life. I need every calendar day to meet up with somebody different and go for a walk around the block, go for a walk in like a little foresty area. I think I need that. I think that that's like, you know, part of my water, food, sleep. It's connection is also one of those things that I need. I don't think it's even like negotiable at this point anymore. Like life is hard enough, and we don't need to make it harder by being so separate from each other.
And I think it's a shame that like Western culture is so centered around, what is it called, the nuclear family, as like an individual unit. Like in Eastern world, we grow up with our grandparents in the same house, raising the grandchildren. Aunties and aunties are next door. It's like a whole communal thing, raising a family. And just as one parent pair, it's so hard to raise kids. It's like you've been saying, like we want to live in a commune and just have like a community of people together. That would be amazing.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. No, literally my life dream is to live on specifically a lesbian commune. I'm a little biased, but you know. But honestly though, I've had so many conversations with all my friends about whether or not we want to have kids, and a lot of us are super on the fence, and I definitely lean more in the direction of like, I don't think it's the path for me. That's where I'm at right now. That may change. But The reason I say that, though, is not because I don't love children or cherish them or think that they would deeply enrich my life and vice versa. Like, I think I would be an amazing mom, but I don't think I could do it in this culture.
I don't think I could do it by myself.
Yeah. No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Even with an amazing partner, even with a little bit of family support, even with a babysitter or a nanny or whatever, even with all these things that many families do have, and unfortunately many families don't, and they have to struggle without it. But even with the so-called supports that we have in our current iteration of society, it's not enough. It's not enough. And I know, like, with my mental health struggles, I just I don't know that I could do it. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
I would definitely need a support system.
Yeah, I think it's one of those really, really incredible life positions or life experiences to want or, you know, to decide with children. But yeah, absolutely. When we're in a position where we know that even just for taking care of ourselves feels like there's so many ups and downs with that, it's like, how do we present that towards a new human being, and how do we navigate that, not knowing where it is that you know could take them. And so it's a ride, it's a roller coaster.
All three of us are overthinkers, so we might be thinking about this too much.
So much, because I know that as soon as it would happen, there'd be an abundance of joy, and we'd probably feel maybe differently. But like, from this standpoint, it's so easy to see the things that could potentially be difficult.
Yeah.
So, at least for myself. So I feel that. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. But like with the community thing that you're saying, I feel like when I created a vision board, I don't do this every single year, but the other year, I think, during COVID, I was like, I have all these random books or magazines at home. I'm like actually going to do a vision board this year. And community, so there was like two common themes. It was community and then finding balance. Those were the two that really stuck out for me, that I made sure to like highlight in this board that I was making. And I think that finding community, there's not necessarily one real definition or what exactly that's supposed to look like or feel like. I think that's unique to everyone. But the sense or the feeling truly is something that you have to just continue to seek and be open to and explore, because I think the power of it is what we all need to maybe continue to lean into, and just be like, okay, I think that I know how important this can be, or what this can do for not only my life, but the lives of my loved ones and extended and everyone. So how do we continue to build community in different spaces and in different environments, or even in like our online communities, which we've been dealing with for the last however many years, like continuing to pour into those. And so I've been thinking about that a lot recently, especially as I've been coming home. What does community look like for me, and where do I want to continue to pour my energy into for that? So maybe you guys have thoughts on that as well.
Mm-hmm. That's what you're working on next, right?
I think so. Yeah. I don't know what it looks like. Don't know what, don't know exactly what it feels like, and all of that, all the details. But I can definitely say for sure that that's what I'm thinking about
I think the whole era of being alone is over, and we all kind of just want to be connected, especially after having experienced what we just did with COVID. Yeah. It's like, oh wait, I really like people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think there's definitely parts of me, and like I'm sure you too can relate to, that are introverted. But I think I don't think that word necessarily applies anymore in the way that I thought it did before. I'm not necessarily introverted. Of course, like anybody, I need my time to recharge, but time with people that are really, I'm like emotional. Time with people that are really loving and feel like home, and feel safe, and where you can be together but doing your own thing, like you don't have to be talking the whole time. You can just sit and enjoy the fact that we are existing in the same space at the same time, and isn't that beautiful? I realized like I'm not introverted. I just have a very specific idea of how I want my life to look, and I'm really no longer willing or able to deal with or be around consistently people who feel harsh, unsupportive, judgmental, people who like my soul and my body don't feel safe around, where I have to put on a mask, where I have to constantly small talk. It's not even that I like don't want to. It's that I don't think I can anymore. I'm done. I'm tapped out.
Yeah, I can totally agree. Absolutely. And the feeling of knowing that you want to create that safety, but even having the vulnerability to be like, okay, I know that I can feel this way with people, so just like being willing to receive it, and then also being willing to say, okay, this is a boundary because now this is happening, and I'm like, okay, this is not what's working for me, but I'm still willing to make it work with other people or with other situations. So it's tough because I think when we're growing up, or even maybe as women, our abilities to set boundaries or even know what those boundaries are in all facets of it, not just like, I don't know, in intimate relationships, I mean, just like general boundaries, it can feel really confusing because I feel like we always want to please others and be in spaces that we're accommodating and we're kind and we're generous and we're this. But when we start to feel that sort of intuitive feeling of like, you know what, this doesn't necessarily, if I had to choose, I would not really be doing this right now, or this kind of sets me off a little bit. Being able to like start with awareness and really give that enough of your attention to be like, you know what, that's okay. I think now I've done that, experienced that, but that's not really what I'm going to work or like, you know, be involved with anymore. And that's okay to walk away from those things.
Yeah.
So,
and it's so hard to do.
Oh yeah.
Like, I've just learned how to set boundaries this year, maybe.
In the process.
Work in progress, yeah. Well, I mean, like, I don't think I had any boundaries at all before this year. I was just always giving to people and constantly trying to make other people happy. And it took like some major life events for me to be like, I need to make myself happy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you speak on that Instagram post that you sent me about what actually a boundary is? Because
I don't even know if I remember.
Okay, I remember then.
Yeah, so it was like a boundary is not like you can't talk to me like that. And you correct me. A proper boundary would be phrasing it like, if you continue to talk to me like that, I will leave. Right? Yay!
Yes. And that, when I realized that, which probably was this year as well for me, everything changed for me, because we cannot control others. We can only control ourselves and our behavior. And so, you know, like whether we're dealing with, you know, a difficult family member who, you know, gets overwhelmed and raises their voice and yells, the solution is not to say like, don't yell at me, because you're feeding the fire. Like, you have no control over what they do, but you do have control in some ways. Of course, there's abusive relationships where people don't have the option to leave, and I'm definitely not talking about those. And if you're in that kind of a situation, there's definitely help, and I'm so sorry. But if there's a chance that you have the capacity, ability, and safety to exit that relationship or that situation for your own well-being, please do that. I've gone through that as well, and I have so much respect for people who have been in those situations, because it's so difficult, especially when it's somebody who you do have love for and you have connection with, but the behavior cannot continue like this. And to set a boundary and say, if you continue speaking to me like this, if you continue yelling, or if you continue with, you know, judging my behavior, my choices. I'm sure many of us have family members who make those snide comments like, oh, are you really going to wear that? Or even to the point of family members who are homophobic, transphobic, who are not accepting of our full selves, it's really difficult. And I think one of the most brave and healthy things for you to do, if you have the capacity and ability to do so, is to say, this doesn't work for me anymore. And if you don't change your behavior, you don't have access to me.
Acknowledge within yourself your own belief system and the things that are important to you as you continue to grow and evolve and shape your life. The things that you decide are worth your time and energy, but also the things that feel good, feel right, and the things that don't. Because sometimes we can maybe question ourselves at moments, especially I think when we're in situations where, especially when we're with maybe like an intimate partner or something, and you're going through all these motions, and it's beautiful, and there's all these beautiful things happening, but then there might be times where it's very clear that there's a moment where you're like, okay, this is not going to work, let's find a solution. But sometimes it's small things that like take a little bit more time to actually unfold before you're like, okay, now I know that this isn't something that I agree with, and this is a value that I'm setting. Let's make a change, or we can maybe, I don't know, do something different. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense or to add on to that, but yeah, I feel like this is an important topic that it takes time, and that's maybe the biggest thing. It's just like being patient with yourself and not giving up on the process of your own self evolution, because truly it's like a lifelong process at the end of the day. And I think that was like a big realization point for me as I was on my traveling journey, was like, I thought I would get there and have certain expectations, and these certain things were going to happen, and I was going to make this content or do this and do that. And then I was like, oh, okay, when I got there, you can only prepare yourself for a certain amount of things, and then you kind of just have to accept, sit, and then just go with it, and know that like if things come up that didn't really work out, or you were kind of disappointed that something changed or whatever, it's really just up to you to allow a new perspective on that experience. And so yeah.
So that going with it sentiment that you just brought up, that kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier about pace and how it was such a shock for you to come back to Western pace.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was wild, I think, because I feel like there's so many factors, but yet it was so apparent to me. Like when I got back, I think the first moment I even stepped into like the Toronto airport, and all of it just like so many more people on their phones, so many people distracted, the types of conversations that were happening, the experience at the airport, the experience coming home, and then all of a sudden being back at home and having all of these gripping sort of poking I guess I don't know exactly the word for it, but all these sensory things that all of a sudden come back in, and that as you're in a space like that where most of the things, like I was walking everywhere where I was going when I was there, so all of a sudden getting back into my car, and every single time I had to go somewhere I had to get into my car, or like I don't know, certain paces that just changed again. And it was really, I guess it's hard to describe because it was more of a feeling. I don't know if there was specifics as to everything. When I was
Nicaragua was like kind of slow.
Yeah.
And it like going with the flow pretty much.
Absolutely. It almost felt like the pace of the area was like the pace of nature. And I feel like the pace of nature, especially when you read a lot about that and how seasons change, how nature essentially evolves, like it goes at a pace that is not rapid. It's really about each detail, each moment being cherished and like as its own beautiful like process, point of the process. Mm-hmm. There's no end destination. It's not like that. We're not always like, when is this gonna happen? Like, nature kind of runs its course. And so I think for me, when I was there, it just felt like it was moving with the pace of like the external environment, and the environment there was it was calm a little bit more. And so I think that's what I experienced, if I could describe it in that way. And so even for me, when I came back, it was mid-October, and I found that around that time of year, as the seasons are changing, which really it was, right? We were moving from summer into fall, and the, you know, coming home, trees were all changing colors. It was that moment in time as well. And I think that really also affected what I was feeling in terms of pace, because I think during the changing of seasons, sometimes it's like we're hitting all of these like moving pieces that can cause a lot of, I don't know, temporary chaos. But yeah, that's how I would also describe it.
Yeah. We're very hectic over here.
Yeah, and I think even if we draw upon like the specifically about the car, like going from walking most places or walking everywhere to needing to get in your car. I mean, the thing is that so many of these like technological advancements are obviously helpful in many ways. Obviously, they've, but also it's the more convenience we have, the more shortcuts we have. Like if I had to walk everywhere in Windsor, there's no, my ability to do anything would be extremely limited, almost impossible. I can't imagine even walking from here to Plant Joy to go and check on the shop would probably take me like 2 or 3 hours. And then walking back, there goes almost an entire work day. So it's impossible to live at the pace we're living if we didn't have these advancements. And at the same time, it means that every single day we can pack in the max of what is humanly possible. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like humanly optimal.
Yeah. No, not at all. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like we can work an 8-hour, 9-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour work day and, you know, answer a bunch of emails and get all these things done. But, you know, how intentional are we being with how we spend our, and even like, this is a total tangent, but even considering like the amount of actual work that somebody would get done in an 8-hour workday probably is around like between 2 and 4 hours if you really, because it's like the water cooler and then the checking social media and the little breaks that we take and the lack of focus that we're actually able to have in an office environment. So, I mean, I don't have any solutions. This is the place that we live in, the world we live in, but it's really beautiful that you had the opportunity to explore life in a different way and more connected to nature, and that's something that I think I aspire to explore as well, because this sensory overload is real, and I don't think that this way of living really is optimal for any of us.
For sure. Yeah, there was just a decrease. It was interesting because it was like a decrease of energy but increase of pace. So I immediately felt a little bit like, but then I also felt like, oh my God. So it was just an imbalance. I feel like we live a little bit imbalanced here. Yeah. And that's maybe what I think I was trying to get at, was just when I was thinking of throughout my entire year of trying to work on this idea of achieving balance in my life, and what does that really mean? What does it feel like? What does it look like? How do you put it on paper? How do you experience it in your day-to-day? How do you, like, you know, put it into your work life and find that balance? And so when I would experience balance there, or what I felt like it would be, a lot of it too was just like enjoying the moments where you were working, as well as the moments where you were like having time with your coworkers, or when you are like, maybe it's not to say that these people there had like a shorter work day. If anything, they might have had longer work days because they have to work so much harder because of their, like, it's quite poor in, especially the area that I was in. There was a lot of work in certain areas, but a lot of people that were just like had no opportunities to work at all. And so these people were hustlers. Like, I'm talking, when you would walk around the street, people had handcrafted items that they were always walking up to you and wanting to sell, telling you this whole story about who made it and this and that, and they're so willing and open to share the like step-by-step process of what this item was or anything, and they'd be so willing to just like sit with you and talk to you and not feel like they were just like, okay, do you want to buy this? Okay, buy, kind of thing. It was like, no, let me sit, let me talk to you, let me create, like, tell a story, let me hear your story, what do you hear? Like, and I enjoyed that so much. And I think that there's a different way of going about the way that we approach even just like our own productivity, or like, I mean, we have hustle culture, and I value that sentiment, but I also think that there's a way to still have that drive, have that like grit, but also have balance and tranquility and all the things that are still equally as important to like level you out as a human, and to so that you don't always feel like you're either on like 100 or like that you're not worth, like, you know. So I just yeah.
What I've been actually trying to push on my Instagram account is to remind people to play, because I don't think we do that enough here. Just like waste time doing things that you love, but playing, because that builds creativity and it generates energy in us when we have the opportunity to play.
Absolutely.
Did you want to touch on your alopecia journey at all?
Sure. Yeah, I think the alopecia journey is one that it's something that I feel like I talk about a lot online, but I don't know how much I really talk about it in like just like a chill chat like this. So sometimes I feel like I have a lot to say, and then other times I'm like, well, it happened. I'm still curious how it happened, why it happened, what triggered it, where it came from, what parts of me need to be, like, where do I need to like get deeper into to maybe find answers, or maybe the answer is that it just happened and that's okay, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think my experience with it so far was that it happened 6 months prior to COVID, and so it was a very, very busy time of my life because I was performing every single weekend. I didn't really have a lot of time to even deal with it when it happened, or I guess I should say I didn't allow myself time to deal with it when it happened. So I was performing actually one of the biggest contracts that I ever had, and that's when my hair started to fall out like pretty rapidly. I had already experienced like a small bald spot on my head, but it never got any worse, and so I was like, okay, that's weird, maybe it's a stress thing. And I just sort of like, I don't know, I don't really think that I took care of myself enough to maybe, like, in hindsight, I might have taken that a little bit more seriously at the time that it happened, but I didn't. I was like, well, you know, I'm not going to stop my work, I'm not going to stop my life. So I think I took a very stubborn approach to my health at that point. I was like, I don't know, that was 3.5 years ago now. And so from there, then COVID happened, and then by that point, I had been maybe fully bald for about 3 months. And so it was a really rapid, like, holy shit, okay, this happened. And then, holy shit, okay, everything else in the world is also happening. And so I think my actual experience processing the change in my physical appearance, the way that I felt about myself, my lifestyle, my career, and all those things sort of came to a like halt at one moment. And I think it was like, yeah, middle of 2020, and I don't know, I all of a sudden just started feeling different, and I couldn't really describe it other than to just like obviously describe like the physical appearance difference and all that, but I wasn't really experiencing any other symptoms. Like, I wasn't sick. I didn't like all of a sudden feel like, oh my God, something's come over me or anything like that. It was like, okay, how do I walk around in the world now? But even though I'm not allowed to actually go outside or do anything right now, how do I like move forward with my life and my identity with this new change? And I didn't really even know how to even start with that. And so, but that really just sparked my interest in looking up healing modalities, as well as healing retreats, I felt like COVID gave me a chance to like really see myself as like kind of a rebellious spirit where immediately I was like, what flight can I go on? So like my first trip that I took that was to Central America was in it was January of 2021. So I started planning that trip almost like as soon as I started feeling that way. I started just looking up and researching different healing spaces, and Guatemala was one of the first places that sort of popped up and that I kept coming back to, like the imagery of it, the different retreats that I was seeing, and the content that I was seeing that they were doing there. So a lot of like spiritual healing, a lot of women's circles. Like I was really starting to go into that direction with it at first. And so I started planning my first trip, and that was in, I think the first week of January. I think I left on the January like 5th or 6th, 2021. I met with a group of women that were doing like a women's retreat in Guatemala. It was kind of at like a yoga retreat space. So there was this beautiful yoga deck that like, I think maybe 12 women. And it was the most wild journey of my life. Like I just like got on a plane, hoped that they would let me into the country. Like it was deep into COVID. Like that was a really wild time. And there was like parts of me that felt so guilty for being like that in that space of like, I'm going to travel, even though we're supposed to stay at home. We're really supposed to avoid travel. I was like, I need to do this for myself. And there was just like that small part of me that was like, this is right. Even though it's wrong, it's right for me. And I just led with that. And I think I was just leading with my heart at that moment, because I really felt like I didn't have much else. My family didn't really know how to support me at that moment, other than to just be like, if this is what you want to do, like, just go for it, I guess, kind of thing. And that really helped a lot. It helped me see myself differently. It helped me see my own strength and my abilities to still be independent as well, but also like being willing to go and meet 12 strangers, open my heart to vulnerability, cry together. They did like one day a ceremony where I was like lying down, and we did like prayers about my hair and stuff. It was super cute, but it was also very amazing to see and to share this experience with people that I don't think I was ready to do it at home yet, even though we weren't really able to do that. I just felt like I needed to give myself an opportunity to like just seek something, and that's all it really was, and that's where it started for me. And now, a year and a half later, I feel like I still have the travel bug. It's a huge thing, but I still feel like I'm accepting the journey and the process, and there are days that are amazing and there are other days that are not. And I feel like I'm coming closer to like being like, I guess the word, especially used in yoga a lot, or even in meditation too, is like homeostasis. Like I feel that I'm really trying to find that within myself and to know what my baseline feels like and what I feel comfortable working with, and where I am starting to draw certain boundaries. So I think with alopecia, it's slowed me down in my life more than I knew that I needed, I guess. And so that I'm grateful for, even though I was really frustrated about for a long time, and I still some days am, because it wasn't something I asked for, but maybe it was something I needed. So I'm starting to lean into that perspective a lot. But I still like to be playful too. I still like to enjoy wearing wigs or learning about makeup and all these things that like I was always involved with before, but now it's like, okay, because I really still want to express myself, and I want to showcase the person that I am visually as well as internally, and I want to try and match those two without feeling like I have to meet a beauty standard. For me now, it's like I don't care about that beauty standard. I want to care about the way that I want to express my individuality, and who I am as a person through art and creative expression, whether it is through makeup or performance or whatever. So I hope to still work on that and still do that. But I also know that there's a part of me that is also trying to be okay with not being that performer, like putting on that mask all the time, being that performer character that I was for so long. I love performing, I love being creative and artistic and expressive, but I also want to be able to come back to myself and express that version of myself too. So that is my current status right now. It hasn't been easy, but it's been a really beautiful space to be in too. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
So I know, like, for women, so much of our identity is tied in my hair. I would absolutely lose my shit if I lost my hair. So how has your identity evolved through this process?
Well, at first I didn't feel feminine. I didn't feel I had a difficult time being like, I still feel like a feminine being, because I feel like it's tied to our femininity. That's a great word to say over and over.
Femininity.
Femininity.
And
I live in an anemone. But that was it. That was it for me. The first experience was like, wow, did I do something as a woman that I no longer deserve to feel like a woman? Like, I didn't understand that for a while. That was the part of me that I sat with for a fair amount of time, because over the process now, I would definitely say that our hair really does have nothing to do with it, even though it still does. But I'm trying to see it in the way that, in terms of beauty, it doesn't have to be that way at all. Yes, our hair actually is a protection for many parts of our body. So in that way, I was like, what space of protection was I like holding or gripping onto that now I need to find surrender for, and then maybe whatever, something might return back to me, I'm not sure. But that was a big one, was the process of going through that and not feeling feminine. But now I feel like, even though there are days where I still feel that way, I just continue to allow myself to sit with what that actually is and start to continue to create a new story surrounding it. And it's not so much about pushing down what I thought it was before. So yeah, that's where I think I would mostly answer that one. But I think there's other things as well within the process of identity. I think, like, on a day-to-day basis it might change. I think we were actually just saying this before, like, some days I could literally describe myself in one way, and then on another day I might feel super different, and that's fine. But identity crisis happens a little bit sometimes, because when you don't like recognize yourself in the mirror as the young child now growing up into a woman, or growing up into this adult version of yourself, and you look at yourself and you're like, wow, okay, this is us now, sort of thing. And seeing past it is it's humbling. It's deeply complex some days, and other days I just try and goof off. Like, sometimes in the mirror I'm like, if I don't make a funny face, I have difficulty walking outside the door. I'll just be like, all right, today we need a laugh. We just need to laugh. And I'll find like the most silly ways that I can like make my face into the mirror. And I'm like, all right, that's how we're leaving today. That's who we're going to show up as today. And hopefully that's enough for whatever I need to accomplish. So
totally.
There's a little bit of that.
And I'm curious of like, it sort of feels like, maybe it was like a emotional, mental, and physical shedding, going through the alopecia, but then also, I mean, we don't have to touch on this too deeply depending on how much you want to go into it, but I think that the emotional journey of COVID happening when you do have a performance-based business, I'm sure was incredibly difficult, and I'm sure many other business owners watching who've experienced similar things can relate. People that owned yoga studios and fitness studios and, all of those different types of places that are really places of community and connection that no longer were able to operate.
Absolutely.
So then now, not only going through that that really deeply emotional physical shedding that you went through of like losing your hair, grappling with your identity, learning a new version of yourself, and then your business is thrown out of whack and you're like, what is happening right now? Like that's I can't even imagine like the like spiritual awakening, or whatever you want to describe it as, like that would lead to.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing to see what a from my perspective at least, like grounded, thoughtful, lovely and kind and compassionate person that you are, considering how much the last few years have thrown you, that you've taken that and said like, okay, what can I learn from this? Like, what is this trying to teach me? I think that's a really, really, really challenging perspective to take, and also really important and beautiful to go through that and ask like, okay, what can I be through this?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that it's definitely, I've had my ups and downs with it for sure. So I know that over time, I don't necessarily think that things will get easier, but I know that as time continues to move forward, I want to be in a space of like also moving with the current, or the values that I hold it so strongly now. Like I think I've just like kind of rebuilt my value system, and that can be a scary place to be in as well. Like when you kind of like reevaluate your life, because that's kind of where I've been, like what I've been sitting with for the last couple of years is just like I feel like I'm reevaluating almost everything. I remember I made a post not too long ago that really talked about, I think it was a quote that I read a little while back, and it just kind of like kept replaying for me, but it was really just about, and actually it's on your mug too, it's about like rebirth, or like being willing to allow things to like completely crumble, to like allow things to just be destroyed and then rebuilt. We see this like in all facets of life, in natural disasters, in our own like mental experiences, but also like with relationship, with pretty much everything. If we have the willingness to allow something to like fully dissolve, and to just know that that's actually where like new things grow. That's the story of like the lotus flower, or pretty much there are many other things in nature that are essentially born, or the mushroom, that are essentially born from like muck, that are born from nothing, and that are, or not, I shouldn't even say nothing, because they're actually, that muck holds like, it's not like when you restart something, you're not restarting from scratch, you're restarting from experience, knowledge. Like there's always so much that is held, so many vitamins, nutrients, minerals, all the things that are the building points of something new. So I'm trying to look at it like that as well. Like even though things crash, bang, boom, like both of the industries that I was working with were the ones that were deemed the least essential. So whatever, I was the one waiting like long time to reopen and just see these things come back to life. So yeah, it allowed me to just be like, okay, what do I find essential in my life? Because apparently these things are not essential. And so I don't know, I just like allowed there to be a little bit of playfulness and curiosity with those questions, those feelings, those open-ended or unknown places in my life. And so yeah, I think the process now for me of rebuilding into the person that I want to be, there was a moment where I was like, okay, I feel like I should have this shit all together. I should be ready to go. Like this is great. Now I feel like I know who I am, and blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, like you kind of just go through a little lull, and then maybe you get new insight, and then it climbs back up. So it's always sort of this ebb and flow. And I really value that, or like being open to the up and down of process. And yeah, so I think over time, I think my biggest wish is that I'll continue to see myself as like a reflection of other people's journeys, because I think for a while, especially when you're growing up, you're really in tune with yourself, and you can see like what you're going through is like the biggest thing in the world. And then now I'm like, okay, if I can just match my vulnerability, my empathy with other experience, with other cultures, other this, other that, I think the person that I'm going to be, I will be okay with whoever that turns into. And I don't want to think so far ahead about that person. I just want to allow myself to love whoever is coming through at any given moment. So yeah, that's what I like to try and talk about a lot in classes as I teach, but it also sometimes comes through in afterwards. I'll teach a class and be like, I feel like they taught me with the process of that just as much as I am the one teaching. It's really just coming through as a mirror, and I really like that aspect of it. So that's why I keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you touch on, for those of you that are listening or watching that don't know, what was your business that you were working in before, and kind of maybe a little bit of the journey of what that business was, how you started it, what it was called, and kind of just give a little snippet of that journey, because I think that's part of the story too.
Sure, yeah. When I was 21 years old, I opened a pole dance studio with a girlfriend of mine. We actually met at a yoga studio in Windsor. And so we opened a pole dance studio because we had learned about pole dance together. We were like, okay, this is amazing. Let's start to teach it. And so we were at this other space, and we were learning. Like we were both in each other's circles a little bit, but we were both learning and really interested in this. And so it came to a point where we just had this amazing conversation. We're like, this is something we really want to do. I think women could really like enjoy this. So we just went full force. We found a space, and we opened a women's pole dance studio in Windsor. Then we also specialized in Pilates and like flexibility stretching classes. And this was back in 2015. At the time, I had no idea about running a business whatsoever. So it was like literally learn as you go, day-to-day thing. Like, oh my God, we need to learn this. Oh my God, this. Oh my God, this. We actually didn't even read our lease agreement fully. We never got someone to actually look it over and see if it looked okay, because there was actually a clause in there that said that we had no eligibility for a renewal. So we only signed a 1-year contract, and we didn't realize that. So we almost came to our 1 year, and we're like, okay, we're doing good. This is great. Like, can we renew our lease? And the guy, the landlord is like, basically, no. Like, we didn't you know that kind of thing? And so we just had to scramble. It was in a really wild time of figuring out different things that you'd like. You always focus on your day-to-day. You focus on your service, everything like that. And then, well, that was a huge curveball for us. But yeah, so I owned a pole dance studio. We grew into a fairly large space after that. We were running regular pole dance classes, bachelorette parties. We did, what else did we do? Lots of other stuff, like events and social nights, but also we did performances. Like we did a few shows as well that were really, really amazing to do with a great group of people that were practicing for a fair amount of time and then showcasing what they've learned. So we did that. And then COVID happened. It shut our place down. We didn't want to continue to be open in a time where there was so much uncertainty, but also the building that we were in was too big. So when we grew into that space, we didn't really do it like having a set plan because it happened a little bit too quickly. So we took the opportunity to actually close during COVID. We tried to keep it open, but then we realized it was actually a better decision to be like, okay, let's rethink this space. Let's see what we can do outside of this space and just see what happens next. So we took our business online. We had about 15 students or so that had poles at home and had the availability to like do Zoom classes. And it was exciting at first because we're like, let's just continue to do things. But yeah, so that's pretty much what happened over the last, or throughout the business that we were together. And then we kind of ended up separating after that, her and I. But then from there, I was also a performing artist. So I did that around the same time we started the business. I started doing pole dance, aerial arts, like circus arts performing almost right away, go-go dancing in Michigan and in Toronto. So most weekends I was always away. I didn't spend a lot of time in Windsor outside of working at the studio. I would be driving to Toronto or driving across the border. Literally, I would say almost every other weekend. So I spent a lot of time in my car, a lot of time alone, a lot of time driving. But then as soon as that happened, everything was shut down. I wasn't performing regularly, for almost 2 years. So I ended up getting contracted to be a performer with a group of people from Windsor downtown at once we were able to open patios back up and all the outdoor stuff. So that was like my first gig back in 2021. And then from there, then I started the traveling journey, and it just since then has been a little bit different. I haven't done as much pole, haven't done as much performing. I've been in the yoga space since then, and really kind of leaning more into this sort of healing process and wanting to share that part of my life. And so now I'm kind of just working to integrate all of those things and sort of reimagining what I would like to share and offer moving forward.
Wow, that was a perfect overview.
It's amazing.
Thanks.
You're incredible, by the way.
Oh boy, gosh, guys, in my head I'm like, am I saying things that sound right? And oh my goodness, but yeah, I appreciate you having me and willing to listen to this and be supportive. I really value the relationship and connection that we've had in this short amount of time, and I hope, thank you so much.
I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to say? Maybe let everyone know where they can find you.
Thank you for being here. You can find me on Patreon. I have a Patreon channel. It's called Vertika Pole and Movement, but basically you could just look it up by Vertika. And then from there, I'm on Instagram. My main two Instagrams are Alex Embodiment, where is more of my performance work, but then also I talk about my alopecia, my yoga journey on alexandra.alopecia.yoga. So pretty much gives it right away in the title there.
I will attach links because I know you spell some of the things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we'll put everything in the show notes, so there's no need to get out a pen and paper and write it down, or not that you would just type it into Instagram. I don't know why I said pen and paper.
But Vertika.
I like pen and paper.
I like pen and paper. I was just gonna spell Vertika. It's Vertika.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you for watching.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, can't wait for more.
Yes.